Assalamu alaikum, my dear friends. This is a follow-up on the previous video on the five archetypes. Now, the archetypes are part of an unfolding dialectic, historical dialectic, as I mentioned to you. And that dialectic is a confrontation, is a showdown is a historical confrontation between truth and falsehood. And in the previous video, in part one of these two videos, I mentioned to you that the seerah of the Prophet, the life of the Prophet, the biography of the Prophet, his mission, in fact, was a manifestation of this dialectic. It was a manifestation of Iman, the Mu'mineen, of the Muslimun, of the Kuffar, of the Munafiqeen, and of the Mushrikeen. And there are many others, but I'm just going to confine it to these five archetypes. The seerah of the Prophet is in fact a manifestation of an unfolding scenario of truth versus evil. The players and the actual context might change, but that scenario is replicable throughout history, right? So if you go back to the history of Fir'aun and Musa, you can find those same archetypes there. You will find, the Mu'mineen, the Muslimin, the Kuffar, the Mushrikeen, those who duplicated or co-opted with God the authority of the king or the ruler. You see, who mixed up loyalty to God with loyalty to the ruler, Fir'aun in that case. And also the Munafiqeen, those who feigned or who faked or who were superficial in their commitment. So that particular scenario, that unfolding dialectic, that historical dialectic, can be applied to any period in history. And all you need is you have truth, you have reality, you have what is right, and you have the proponents, you have the mu'mineen, those who endorse it, you have the Muslimin, those who comply with it, and you have those who are distracting from it, the kuffar. And so what this video is about is to see how do we apply this unfolding dialectic, how do we apply it to our times. Now, today the world has evolved or emerged to such an extent that we can literally to a large extent claim that the challenges facing you wherever you are on the globe would not be too dissimilar from the challenges which face us. And I do suspect that we have reached the point of the single tribe, of the global tribe. The global tribe which was prophesied by in the Qur'an in Surah, what is the word? What is the surah? Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the Ya'juj and Ma'juj. Ya'juj and Ma'juj, right? So the Gog and Magog, in other words, and where the globe has evolved, where this tribe dominates. Basically, if you listen to some of the lectures of Imran Hussein, which there's some aspects of it that I found very intriguing, but this particular point on Gog and Magog is that these are contemporary major global tribes. And when you look at the verses in the Quran, in that particular surah, then it does appear as if these will be tribes that will emerge from every corner of the world. So we can really almost argue that the Quranic dialectic, that truth-falsehood dialectic, could take a global, can become global in scope. Whereas the Prophet confronted his opponents, those who distracted from what is true and real and just and right, he confronted them at a sort of a national, or at a regional level in the Arabian Peninsula. I feel that we've almost reached a point where we need to apply the Quranic dialectic, the ultimate confrontation of falsehood at the global level. but not exclusively so. You see, there are many struggles that are very local also in nature. And that is my reading of the Quran, is that we are not here to worship the Quran. We are here to implement, to apply the Quran, like an algorithm. You know, if somebody writes an amazing algorithm that provides for an amazing output, you know, that will create an amazing analysis or an output, that algorithm is not something you worship and recite and read and, you know, remain amazed at. It's an algorithm that you actually have to plug in. You have to run it, you know. And that is really the idea of the Quran, is to run the algorithm, to be the archetypes that the Quran speaks about. And that is what I'm promoting now. Practically, what does it amount to? For me, practically, and I'm not going to, you know, don't be triggered or don't be sort of like, we all have to analyze the reality that confronts us, and then we have to define ourselves as activists, as people who want to live out our vision of what is a good Muslim or what is a good mu'min. Now, for me, it's always about every situation that confronts me in my community, in my country, and globally. Every emerging problem, and generally they come as problems, right? You need to identify the reality of the situation. You need to identify what is going on. You need to make sense of the problem. And once you make sense of the problem, you will identify the gap and what would be the deficit. Where is the problem? Where is truth or reality or right being denied? Where is there a denial of truth, a denial of what is right or people's rights, and where is there a denial of what is real, right? So in other words, in every situation that emerges that I experience, I prefer, if it touches me, of course, I'm not there to get involved in people's business, but where it affects me. Let's take a local example, right? We have a situation recently where a tower was going to be constructed, a 5G or something, some tower was going to be constructed. Not even 5G. I think it was just a GSM 4G, 5G massive tower. But in the particular area where I stay, we have an abundant bird life and natural maintained environment, you know. And we just felt, some of us in this community, we just felt that the tower, and we did our research, we looked at the research of how birds are affected by these towers, and we have a lot of migrating birds, breeding birds, more than 28 bird species which I have outside my house every day, and including pelicans, flamingos, kingfishers, eagles. There are so many different type of bird species here. Those are the big ones. There are many small birds. And we did the research, and what we found was that it does, in fact, and I have a very close family member, a daughter who's a biologist also, a lecturer and a biologist, and she participated and assisted, and we found that using the best sort of scientific analysis and research, that this would be harmful to the bird life. We just found that it would actually be detrimental as an area which is a reserve. And we took a position on that. We took a position, we had a small group that emerged that challenged the building of this tower. And this electronic tower, that the 5G, 4G tower. And so what I'm saying to you is that in that case, we identified the reality. We identified that what would be the best course of action using our best research, scientific investigation, and understanding of the technology. And we came to the conclusion that we should be arguing and we should be advancing a position to discourage the erection of this tower. And it wasn't a Muslim thing, although we are regarded as Muslim, but there was a wide spectrum of members of the local community that then went and submitted a formal challenge to the erection of this tower. And fortunately, it took a while. It was quite a lengthy battle. We had to draft lots of papers. We had to submit our reports. We made the effort. And in the end, after many, many months, probably more than a year, between a year and 2 years of raising the objection, we were given, our side actually won, and the opposite side, which included a massive GSM mobile connectivity company, they in fact withdrew the application. And so we had victory in that case, alhamdulillah. So I'm giving you an example of where I see my conviction, Iman, my Islam, my being Muslim, my, arguing for what is real, what is true, what is right. And that was an example of a small microcosm of undertaking an effort to restore what is best for nature, for people, for harmony, for the greater good. And but it doesn't end there. You see, I've my understanding of what it is to live out the spirit of the Qur'an, that dialectic, that truth-evil dialectic, goes beyond that. And I'm going to, at a slightly more contentious level, I'm going to look at geopolitical developments, right? So geopolitically, we for me, sitting in Africa, we have a very different perspective on geopolitics than perhaps you sitting in the UK or in the US. Our perspective of global politics is very different because we don't have the luxury of being beneficiaries to the historical dispossession that the West visited upon the rest of the world. Sitting in the US and the UK, you might have some understanding, but we have a much more direct understanding of how these countries plunder the rest of the world. In this country, for example, we have one massive company called Anglo-American, believe it or not. This is a private company and it is called Anglo-American. Now, Anglo-American is South Africa's colossus. It is a company of epic proportions. And the name, as it says, it is British and American. It is an Anglo-American. That is the very name of this company. They historically have acquired more than 80% of this country's wealth. The public sector, private sector, they've been able to acquire more wealth than the state actually owns in this country. And this company is historically tied to both Britain and, as the name says, with America. And so when it comes to global politics, and Anglo-American goes back long before the overthrow of apartheid. You must know what that is. And Anglo-American survived apartheid. So they were the architects, or they were the beneficiaries of 50 years of apartheid, from 1948 until 1994, right? That's not yet a full 50 years, but they were the beneficiaries then. They were the beneficiaries of British South Africa, which preceded 1948, when more Britain-oriented parties ruled this country. And so these companies have been owning the wealth in the ground, the gold, the diamonds, the platinum, whatever precious minerals is buried under the ground. They've had rights of mining them and profiting from them. So geopolitically, we have a very clear view of where our wealth is going. You see, this country produced probably, I'm not sure, you can go and verify this, half of the global gold reserves would probably have emanated from Africa, from Southern Africa. Half of the global gold reserves. Go and check that. If I'm out, I'm not out by far. So I literally or we can see the effects. We see the advancement of the elite, and we see the impoverishing of the masses. And there are much, much, much poverty. It is unthinkable that a country that produced and exported half of the global gold reserves to the value of probably hundreds of trillions of dollars now can have so much deprivation and suffering and poverty. We have people living in the most dismal squalor that you can imagine on this planet, in this country. Because South Africa is also one of the most uneven countries. And if you look at the economic system, which is controlled and dominated by these massive global corporations like Anglo-American, then you will realize that it is not there in spite, or the poverty is not there in spite of these massive colossus, but it is there because of such colossal companies. The poverty, the degradation, the backwardness, the suffering of the masses, the backwardness of the masses is there because of these powerful global companies who are taking the wealth, in this case hundreds of trillions of dollars of gold, and not honoring or respecting the people who live on the surface of those mining areas, who live right there by those mining areas. And if you read the history of this country, then you will see that it is a history of invasion. You know, the day gold was discovered, the day that diamonds were discovered, that was the day that Britain was the superpower of 1889, 1880. That was the day that Britain decided to take it, to come for it. And in a short period of 20 years, Britain came up from where they were. They never ruled the gold-rich parts of South Africa. They ruled the southern tip, which is where I stay. But when gold was discovered in the northern areas of our land, in the hinterland, in the inner land, that was when they marched and they conquered and occupied those pieces and turned them into profit-making opportunities for the super rich corporations that controlled Britain, in fact. So that is very clear to us. We don't suffer from a lack of understanding who the enemy is, who the exploiter is, who the slave drivers are, who are the people who visit poverty and degradation on the masses. We see it very, very clearly. And today, this is the most uneven country in the world. One of the most, I think it's in the top 3 most uneven countries. And right, so coming back to the Quranic paradigm, what I am saying is that the analysis is clear. The understanding is clear. We know what the truth of the matter is. We know what the reality of the matter is. We know what rights are being infringed. We know where the problem lies. And as mu'min, as a Muslim, I feel it my duty to then advance truth, to promote what is right and to promote what is real in this context. Now, it takes a national a scope nationally, but it also takes a global scope, because these forces, these global players, for example, Anglo-American, is not a South African actor. It's a global actor. And so the onslaught of global corporatism, global colonialism, and colonialism is not just about political exploitation, it is about economic exploitation. It is about cultural invasion and exploitation. It takes a global dimension. And as a Muslim, as a mu'min, I feel it necessary, as with that the GSM 3G or 4G, 5G tower, I see it as my duty to make a contribution as a mu'min, as a Muslim, to join hands with those who are working against the injustice, against the imposers of oppression, of exploitation at a global level. And that, my dear friends, you can do your analysis, you can run your research, but I can tell you now, I've done 40 to 50 years of research, and there is no other global colonizing entity, exploitation agency greater than the West. Greater, and when I say the West, I mean the elite that is centered in America, but also present in Europe, Australia, and in countries, and in certain countries like South Africa, where they form a fifth column, a pocket of that country. In South America, you find the global elite vested in certain countries from where they direct this global system of oppression, of exploitation, of impoverishing the masses, of using every trick in the book, as I mentioned to you. They are the kufar, my friends. They are the exploiters. They are the people who are perverting what is real, what is true, what is right. And these perverters of truth, these are the kufar, the global corporations, the global elite, the global banking system. This is kufr manifested at a global scale. And you and I, we need to become not only Muslims, where we establish the code of the Qur'an, or an alternative code of life, but we need to become mu'min also, where we embrace that alternative code. We need to become, there's other archetypes that I've not mentioned, the mujahideen, those who actively struggle with their goods, with their possessions, with whatever resources they possess, and with the effort, with the ingenuity that they possess. We need to use our resources and our ingenuity, our goods and our persons, as some translate the word in the Quran, our ingenuity as well as our resources to confront, to tackle, and to expose that global system of kufr. So my friends, it's a mouthful, but what I'm sharing with you in this video is that vision of what is a Muslim is not a vision that is historical. It is an emerging vision. It is a vision, it is a paradigm, it is a dialectic that spans all the ages of this planet. And wherever you stay, and whenever or wherever you live, you have to join, and you have to express, and you have to give expression to that paradigm. And that is how I see my role, practically speaking, in terms of the paradigm of the Quran, the dialectic of truth versus evil, and also the various archetypes.